that may have come in that late. I think that's proper. Ms. Orth, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
So technical testimony actually has to come in under oath and be subject to cross-examination.
Right, and I know that on occasion we'll get the, well, so this is based on my understanding and somewhat limited experience. Sometimes even comments will just come in that a party feels like it needs to address. I know Mr. Ames has voiced concerns about that before. So I want to make sure we're clear, or at least verify to some extent the parties are at least aware of and had a chance to take a look at those comments in case there is an issue buried in them that we need to get addressed. I personally had not looked yet.
And they didn't come in that late. They were actually received in the first part of the day. So I suspect the parties had already considered them. We can ask, though.
I think just asking would make me feel better. So that way everyone's on the same page, has seen these documents.
All right. Madam Chair, would you like me to open the record this morning and then pass the virtual gavel to you?
Yep, that sounds good.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. We are back on the record in case number 21834. These are proposed amendments to the Commission's rules on releases, 19.15, 29.6, 29.8, and 29.15. We completed the live evidentiary record portion of the hearing yesterday, and written public comment was due by 5 p.m. Last night. We had just the written public comment that was referred to yesterday during the hearing from Ralph Rons and Intrepid Potash. At the end of the record yesterday, I had asked counsel to say whether they chose to make any rebuttal based on evidence that had come in during the hearing. The answer was no from all parties. Let me pause for a moment. In the event there's anyone who believes, based on the written public comment, that they would like to put on rebuttal. I hear nothing, and we did do a sound check this morning with all counsel, so I know all counsel are on the platform.
Ms. Orth, it looks like Mr. Ames was trying to say something.
Oops, Mr. Ames?
Good morning, Ms. Orth. I just want to clarify, the comments that were received are not testimony. They've not been admitted into evidence. And I think there would be some hazard for the commission to rely upon those comments in making its decision. So with that, we do not intend to present any testimony regarding those comments. All the parties have rested. The parties that presented witnesses have rested. The others did not. And statements of counsel regarding comments would not be probative in any event. So that's all I need to say. Thank you.
All right. So we might have a discussion about how the commission can weigh written public comments. Again, they're not taken under oath or subject to cross-examination. They are part of the larger record. I think the commission considers in their decision making, but I'll leave that in the event they have questions about that. I'll leave that to Mr. Moander. I was just following a line of inquiry that was just suggested. So, Madam Chair, there really isn't any other evidence to come in. The record is closed. Public comment is closed. And if you would like to begin your deliberations this morning, I think you have everything you need.
Thank you, Ms. Orth. All right, commissioners, I think it is likely the easiest to work off of OCD Exhibit 6. Does everybody have OCD Exhibit 6?
And Madam Chair, just so you know, if you want to do what we did last time in the venting and flaring hearing, I do have a draft up on my screen that could be put up for everyone to look at. I don't know how we want to, or how do you like to do that? Because this is a much lighter document than the last couple we've worked
Yes.
on. So and I think it's pretty straightforward, but I'll leave that up to you because that option is of course on the table.
That might be helpful just to make sure we're all looking at the same thing at the same time. Balin, did you give Mr. Moander approval to present?
He's already ahead of me and had me,
Perfect.
as we were talking, he posted it up, which is hilarious. Okay.
You
So
make it a smidge bigger.
I can. Let me move some icons around my desktop so I can actually see. And I will just, to state the obvious, but to be clear, this will not, and when things are completed, we'll remove the draft watermark.
Right. Okay. It's sort of hard to see on there, but let's, commissioners, unless you
Is that
have
better?
any other. Oh, yeah, that's good. Commissioners, unless you have any other preference, I think we just sort of roll down it and have discussion. So 1915-29-6, the proposal by OCD WEG and agreed upon by IPA&M and NMOGA was to add in the objectives that the objective was to prohibit releases and require persons, and the change there is adding prohibit releases, which makes spilling prohibited. There was testimony from Mr. Griswold on, I think, why that change was made and the potential benefit of that change. I am agreeable with it. Commissioner Bloom and Commissioner Warnell, do you have any comments and do you agree on that change?
Madam Chair, I do agree with these changes, particularly based on the testimony provided by Mr. Griswold of the OCD, specifically when he spoke to the number of releases, spills that happened between 2010 and 2020. More than 12,000 were identified, according to his testimony. He says, including about 7,000 releases of produced water and 4,000 releases of crude oil. And pointed out that, quote, during 2020 alone, operators reported more than 700 releases involving produced water, of which 330 were major, defined as 25 barrels or more, and 398 releases involving crude oil, of which 90 were major, end quote. So seeing that and having heard no objections, I don't believe from anybody among the parties involved here, nor in public comment, I believe that these are solid changes and I'm supportive of the changes in language here.
Just to be clear, I think the only opposition we heard in general was from a written comment from Intrepid Potash. But otherwise, everybody, all the parties were supportive. Commissioner Warnell? You might be muted.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I totally
Good morning.
support the changes. I also heard some very positive support from all of the parties yesterday, with the exception of Intrepid. So I think we go forward.
Thank you. Okay, that change adding the prohibit releases and is approved. It looks like also in 1915-29-6, there was a minor modification, just sort of in formatting. Procedures was moved up so that it states, and to establish procedures for reporting, site assessment, remediation, closure, variance, and enforcement. I think based on Mr. Griswold's testimony, and this being, I think in general, a relatively minor change, just cleaning up some of the language. I'm good with moving that word and making the change.
And so, Madam Chair, I want to just interject here with an idea that because we're going by like down to subsection here, essentially, why don't we go through and do the changes because they are fairly minimal. And then I'm going to have, I propose the commission do a quick vote. So basically there'll be a vote on 6, 8, 15, and I think that's it. So we can do them kind of in a lump sum. So what I recommend is there be a motion to just vote on 29.6 and the changes that have been discussed and found favorable to date, and we can just vote on it that way, or you can vote on it that way.
Okay. Before we vote, I just want to make sure if Commissioner Bloom or Warnell have any comments on moving procedures and changing up that piece of 6.
Madam Chair, I do not. It makes sense to move the word procedures as discussed by Mr. Griswold in his testimony. Thank you.
Commissioner Warnell is fine with it.
Thank you. Mr. Moander, do you want to do a roll call vote for approval of the changes to 1915-29? I'm sorry. First, is there a motion to adopt the changes as proposed in 1915-29-6?
Madam Chair, I move to approve changes as identified in 1915-29-6.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
All right. Now, Mr. Moander, would you please do a roll call vote for us?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Warnell,
Yes, I vote yes.
Commissioner Bloom,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the motion passes.
Great. All right, there are actually just really one change in the next section, 1915-29-8. There is the addition of a section A, and section A, it adds, it continues with the prohibition that was just approved upon in the objectives, and states there is a prohibition for major releases and minor releases. And as was proposed in an addition by the division after the original proposal, a exception for parts 27 and 28. For the record, parts 27 and 28 are the natural gas waste rules for production operations and for natural gas midstream operations that were just approved by and voted on by the commission and went into effect in May. And those rules piggyback off of Part 29 for some of the release reporting releases in those rules being referred to or being natural gas type releases, but Part 29 covers natural gas releases as well as releases of liquids. So in 27 and 28, there are required reporting pieces. And there was extensive testimony during those hearings about aligning parts 27 and 28 with part 29 so that operators aren't having to report so that operators aren't having to report one release 2 different times on 2 different forms. And so there was an alignment of part 27 and 28 with part 29. And so because of that, and because of, I think, the extensive testimony that was done at those hearings, you know, I think that this addition by the OCD makes sense. If not, it really would change sort of the broader intent and discussions and testimony that was heard in parts 27 and 28. And that went through extensive processes. So I am good with the addition 1 of A in general, as well as the addition of the exception in parts 27 and 28 in order to not undermine the regulations that were just passed by the commission a couple months ago. Commissioners Bloom or Warnell, do you have any discussion on that point?
Madam Chair, I agree that these are warranted changes to the rule. As you noted, and as Mr. Griswold noted in his testimony, the parts 27 and 28 were just recently changed this year and made to come into alignment with parts 29. So this is important language to have in this update to this rule. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Warnell, I agree with the addition of paragraph A.
Thank you. The only other changes on here just correspond with adding A. A is now B, B is now C. And there were no other changes proposed in that section. So with that, I will ask if there is a motion to adopt the changes that were in OCD Exhibit 6 in 1915-29-8.
Madam Chair, I move to adopt the changes to 1915-29-8.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I second that motion.
Mr. Moander, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Bloom,
Yes.
Commissioner Warnell,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
the motion passes unanimously.
thank you. All right. Last but certainly not least are the changes to 1915-29-15. There are a handful of changes here, predominantly focused on aligning this rule with the penalties rule that OCD gained the authority for during the 2019 legislative session and then passed an associated rule at the beginning of 2020. And there were some changes that were testified by from Mr. Griswold explaining why they were made. Primarily, these are alignment changes and just a little bit of formatting in lieu of an agreed compliance order in 15B. The rule refers to stipulated final orders, so aligning that language with the penalties rule. Same thing in C, making sure that language is aligned. And then striking D again in order to align everything with the new authority that OCD gained starting in January of 2020. So this would make sure that our rules are aligned with one another, which I think is important, particularly in this section, which, you know, I think is this section, I think, takes on some new meaning now that spills are prohibited. So it's an important section to align with our other rules and authority. Commissioner Bloom and Commissioner Warnell, do you have any discussion on the changes in 1915-29? 1915-29-15.
Madam Chair, thank you. I also stand in support of these changes to Section 15. I agree it's important to align this rule with OCD's penalty rule, which changed recently. I realize this is just about updating our rules and making sure that they're in close alignment. I believe I asked Mr. Griswold a question about this language, and it certainly satisfied my question, I should say. So I fully stand in support. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Warnell here. I also support the changes to 1915, 29-15.
And just to be, I guess, just to be thorough here, there was some discussion by public commenters as well as, I believe, the interveners in 1915, 29-15A, that the terminology should be the division shall take enforcement actions as opposed to the division may take enforcement actions. And so just to be thorough, I think it's good to bring that up in the discussion. In multiple rulemakings, including the waste rulemaking that the division just underwent, I think there's been a lot of discussion about the importance of maintaining the division's enforcement discretion. Each individual case is unique, and it's important to, allow the division to manage enforcement as they see fit. And so I think that there is support to maintain the original proposal that says the division may take enforcement action. This was the language that is agreed upon by OCD and WEG and their original proposal. It was agreed upon by two of the other parties, NMOGA and IPA&M. And so I think that language should continue to say may as opposed to shall. Commissioners, do you have any comments on that additional piece in 15A?
Madam Chair, if I might interject here, I believe this was also the section, I don't have the interveners rule in front of me. I believe this was the section also where there was a proposal for a rebuttable presumption concerning the spills. I believe that's right, and if that's the case, perhaps maybe touch on that as well.
Mr. Moander,
Yes,
ultimately interveners withdrew that particular proposal.
that's right, they did.
Yes.
You're right, so we don't need to touch on that.
That was handled in the, just for the record, that was handled in the motions hearing on the 4th. And was subject to an order that was put out.
Yes, I would just add that because of the results of the motion hearing and the fact that changes to this were not on the table yesterday, I don't really feel that we can discuss this at this time. So thank you.
Ooh, I lost something here.
Oh, no, I don't think so. Or you? Can you hear me, Commissioner Warnell?
I can hear you.
Where'd everyone else go?
It looks like Adrian's speaking, but I can't hear her.
Oh, I was probably muted. Sorry. I was just
Oh.
gonna, I'm just speaking to the world here and nobody's listening. I was just gonna ask if you had any additional comments or discussion on that section in A.
Commissioner Warnell has no additional comments. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, is there a motion to adopt the changes as is proposed in OCD Exhibit 6 to 1915-29-15?
Chair, I move to adopt the proposed changes to 1915-29-15 as seen in Exhibit 6. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I second that motion for 29.15.
Mr. Moander, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Warnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Bloom,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, well, that wraps up the changes. I think we need to discuss. Okay, so our next scheduled meeting is on July 8th. I believe that these changes are relatively straightforward and could be voted on for a final order at that hearing. Mr. Moander, is there a proposed, or Ms. Orth, is there a proposed procedure as to how to get to that date and to vote on that final order?
Well, Madam Chair, I was planning on doing exactly what we did with the venting rule, which is I want to get my hands on the transcript from yesterday just to be, I want to prepare a thorough order and then get the final versions of the rule ready to go. Let's see, how far out is July 8th?
I think it's like 4 weeks.
Is it? Oh, yeah, I guess it's around that. So I don't have a problem being prepared for that. But what I would tell the commissioner, well, I will be out of the office on the 6th and the 7th. So I will have that sent out to everybody the week before. I'll discuss it with the parties, have the order, final rule, everything that needs to accompany that ready to go and disseminated to the parties the week beforehand.
Okay.
And then at that point, because we'll have it noticed, the parties will have it. I'll work with them on the order to make sure everything is where everyone wants it to be or needs it to be. And it really should be fairly straightforward and not all that time consuming.
Great. Okay. Then this will be added to the docket for the July 8th hearing to vote on the final order in 1915-29 changes that were proposed here today. Are there any other pieces that we need to handle on the rule changes before we move on to the other?
I don't believe so, Madam Chair, but as always, I'm open to any other input.
Ms. Orth, or did we put a bow on it?
Right. I think when you adopt the, let me share my video. When you adopt the statement of reasons, just make sure you remember to authorize the division to make whatever changes they need in order to file the rules. But I think that's a task for July 8th.
Okay. You mean adopt them just if there were any formatting changes, et cetera, as necessary by the Record Center?
That's what I mean.
Okay. That makes sense. All right, well, before we move on to pending litigation, which is agenda item number 5, I just want to thank the parties. Thank you for your collaboration and coordination. I think you have made this a relatively smooth process. and, a very well executed. So thank you all for your, I think, collaboration up front. And this is an important item for the commission to have taken into consideration. So thank you.
I would also like to thank the parties for their work on this. I'm finding the level of professionalism and focus coming out of council to be excellent and extremely helpful. And I think this hearing reflects a lot of that in terms of how it operated. So that's a thank you from me personally.
And I'll echo what our chairwoman and Mr. Moander said. Thank you all very much. Greatly appreciated.
All right, with that, Mr. Moander, would you like to give us an update on pending litigation?
As of right now, there isn't anything to report about any particular case. I'm going to knock on my desk made of wood because it's a nice situation to be in. But yeah, right now there's nothing to report.
All right, is there any other business before the commission today? All right, our next regularly scheduled meeting is on July 8th at 9 a.m. And with that, I will thank everybody for your time the last couple of days, and wish you an almost happy weekend, a day and a half away. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Madam
Have a
Chair.
good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You all.
Thank you.
Chris, I will get you this transcript by yesterday's transcript by today and today's transcript by tomorrow, okay? I guess get off.
Chris is gone.
Yes, that's all right. Good to see you, Commissioner. Have a good one.
Thank
Bye.
you.